Hello, today we're going to talk about the builder design pattern. This is an alternative to our standard constructor to instantiate objects. So this is great for really complex objects and that maybe have a lot of optional fields. We don't want to make 100 different constructors, overload all of them with different possibilities. Maybe there's a step-by-step process to create this object, so we need to wait for something to go to a database, a relationship to be made before we can proceed. And finally, it's just a lot more readable, more maintainable from a development standpoint. And certainly for today, what we're looking at, I mean, that's the only real application for this because we have a very simple Space Marine who's just got a name, he's got a faction, and he's got a loyalty check, true or false. So this is what this object would usually look like. We have our constructor. This is called when we use the new keyword. And then we have our setters and we have our getters. We're going to do, and then usually we would create a new one like this, Space Marine equals new Space Marine. Right now it's yelling at me because we don't have the required arguments for the constructor. So if we did our name, our faction, and I spelled Buckeyes wrong, and our Boolean check, then this would compile. But let's try something a little different. We're going to keep our getters, but we're going to get rid of our constructor and our setters. And what we're going to do is we are going to put a nested class. It's going to be static so that we don't need to instantiate it to call it, and we're just going to call it builder. And then it is going to mirror the values of the Space Marine. So it's going to have a name, a faction, and a loyalty check. And then in here, we're going to make our setters. We're just going to make them a little bit differently. So instead of being void, we are going to return the builder itself. I'm going to say set name. It's going to take a name, and it's going to be this dot name. So the builder dot name equals name, and then we are going to return this. And we're going to do the same thing for our faction, and we are going to do insert key, and blah blah blah. This new keyboard is driving me insane. This is what I get for buying the cheapest keyboard there because the spacing is actually really bad. It's incredible. I'm sorry. And then finally, I'm gonna buy a new keyboard. Our last one, set loyal, boolean loyal. And this dot loyal equals loyal. And once again, return this. Perfect. So now we have our actual method inside of here, built, where it is going to return a Space Marine. And it's going to be a new one. So Space Marine. And we, instead of passing in individually the name, the faction, and loyal, we are just going to pass in the builder that we just made. Now you can see this is yelling at me. That's because the Space Marine doesn't have any constructor that matches this. And I spelled Space Marine wrong. It's still going to yell at me because the constructor doesn't have anything that matches this, right? So let's go ahead and fix that. We're going to make this private, so that only the constructor, the constructor can only be called from within this class. So nobody outside of that can bypass our builder. And instead of putting in a string name, string faction, boolean loyal, we are just going to pass in the builder that we just made. And then we're going to say this dot name equals builder dot name. This dot faction equals builder dot faction, and this dot loyal, why would you do that, equals builder dot loyal. Boom. And there we go. And we already have our getters, so we can see this in action. But now we're going to go in here, and you see now this is complaining because there is no constructor like this. So instead of doing this, we're going to do new Space Marine dot builder. And we're going to say set name, Adrian, new set faction, it's going to be Buckeyes, and do set loyal, true, and then we're going to build the object. And there we go. Now we have our builder design pattern implemented, and we can go ahead and take a look at this guy. We can see, is he loyal? Go ahead and print that. Say, yep, he sure is. Where you can see his name. You can see Adrian, and his faction, we can do the same thing. But we can also, now we can just get rid of some of these. We can get name, this should return null. So we still created our object, he just doesn't have a name. And our faction, we see we still have that, but if we get rid of it, it's fine. We can still build this object. So that's our builder pattern. Really quickly as I can do it. Again, this is kind of a very common thing we'll see done, especially for new people who always use the constructors. This is one of the first things they'll probably encounter. Like, hey, I see you're using this builder thing. What is that? Well, that's all this is. This is the builder design pattern, and it's a great alternative to the standard constructor that offers a lot of benefits. So thank you guys very much for your time, and I'll see you next time.